That's the story for this Thursday, May 20th. Story continues. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Neil's up next.
A ceasefire declared, but will it hold? The move ending in an 11-day conflict between Israel and Hamas. The news coming amid intense pressure by the White House. It is still unclear when exactly the truce will take effect. This hour, we'll be speaking to combat veteran and Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst on this major development. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charles Payne in for Neil Cavuto, and this is Your World. First, to Trey Yinks on the Israel-Gaza border with the very latest. Trey.
Charles, good afternoon. Breaking tonight, the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with Hamas, the group in control of Gaza, basically ending 11 straight days of fighting between the two sides. We are getting reports right now. According to Israeli media, this is set to go into place and into effect around 2 a.m. local time, and there are no preconditions. This is significant because we spoke earlier today with Hamas, who said there would have to be preconditions in order to stop the fire. Now, after the reports started to circulate that the Israelis were on board with this ceasefire agreement after a week of being urged not only by the United States, but also the United Nations to stop this fighting, we are not really sure if it's going to hold. One example of that is off in the distance now, you can still hear Israeli helicopters and fighter jets. They're continuing operations against Gaza up until this ceasefire actually goes into effect. And also, just a few minutes ago, there were mortars and rockets fired into this area in southern Israel, the city of Ashkelon. Earlier today, in that conversation with Hamas, we tried to get an understanding of their perspective about this conflict and the involvement of the Americans. I want you to take a listen to this senior official on what they had to say about the Biden administration.
All in all, I think the efforts done by the American administration in this round of escalation was much, much less than expected. And they have more power to oblige Israel to stop these fightings.
We saw this sort of hands-off approach by President Biden and the U.S. State Department as an estimated 80,000 Gazans are internally displaced right now, caught between Hamas rockets and Israeli airstrikes. The humanitarian situation quickly unraveling as Palestinian civilians run out of food, electricity, and clean water. Reports do indicate that Erez crossing on the northern part of the Gaza Strip will be open tomorrow for humanitarian aid. But as we saw earlier in the week, sometimes those convoys are actually targeted with rockets and mortars, and it makes it very difficult to get that aid into the Gaza Strip. But tonight, again, that breaking news, the Israeli Security Cabinet approving a ceasefire that will effectively end 11 days of fighting between the Israeli military and Hamas. Charles.
Trey, thank you very much. I want to get the read from Rebecca Heinrichs, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Rebecca, your thoughts on this, particularly in the last 24, 48 hours where there was obviously extreme pressure from the White House. At one point, President Biden, according to some reports, demanding a de-escalation on the part of Israel with this fighting. What do you think?
Well, I'm tentatively very encouraged. Of course, the fighting is going to continue all the way up to the ceasefire. The ceasefire, the early reports are that it will take into effect. It'll be about 7 p.m. Thursday night, so that's tonight, Eastern time. And of course, Israel is going to continue to take out the targets that it believes are necessary, where Hamas is still hiding and where it's still conducting operations. I thought Trey made the important point, too, the reporter, right before you and I began chatting, Charles, that the humanitarian aid that is coming in, it's important to be clear about where it's coming from. Israel is delivering aid to those civilians that are in the crossfire, and Hamas continues to fire upon those delivering aid in that area. So it's important to keep in mind who the aggressors are here and who is trying to go to extremes to make sure that we minimize the civilian casualties that are caught in the middle of this.
Rebecca, obviously it's a ceasefire. It's tenuous. It will be tenuous at best. What steps have to be taken immediately during this period to maybe come to a conclusion of this latest round of violence?
Well, they need to begin winding down. So even as I just said, Israel's going to continue to take out some targets. That's going to have to be very clearly decreasing towards the end. But the Israelis are not going to stop if they're still taking incoming from the Hamas militants. And so that has to stop because, of course, Israel's under enormous international scrutiny right now. the Palestinian side has taken on more casualties. And that does not mean that they are the ones that are more innocent, though that is the narrative that's going to continue to be painted. Remember, Hamas is still hiding among civilian targets. And so as Israel tries to warn civilians to evacuate those areas, it's very difficult because the Hamas militants are hiding there. So what needs to happen is Hamas has got to stop. They have got to stop launching these attacks against civilian targets inside of Israel.
Yeah, winning the public relations war and losing these unnecessary skirmishes serves no one, that's for sure. Rebecca, we always appreciate your expertise on this. Thank you so much for helping us with this fast-breaking news. Meanwhile, folks, the White House clearing the way for a Russian pipeline to proceed, even though they say it's a bad idea. Now, of course, remember, this is while they cancel work on the Keystone pipeline right here in the USA. Scrapping that deal, by the way, cost more than 11,000 Americans their jobs. We'll talk to one of them, in fact, in a moment. But first, to Peter Doocy, who's at the White House with the very latest. Peter.
Charles, good afternoon. And the White House has made clear they know most greenhouse gases are emitted beyond U.S. borders. So when they canceled the Keystone XL pipeline project, they said they were hoping others in the world would follow our lead.
President Biden blocked the Keystone XL pipeline here because he said it would undermine U.S. climate leadership and undercut our ability to urge other countries to take ambitious climate action. So how is he urging other countries to take ambitious climate action if he's letting other countries build Nord Stream 2?
First, we're hardly letting any country or other countries build Nord Stream 2. When the president took office, 95% of this pipeline was built. We've continued to convey that we believe it's a bad idea, a bad plan.
The White House is basically saying today the decision to identify officials they say deserve sanctions, which would have made it tough for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to proceed, and then waive those sanctions, making it easier for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to proceed, was diplomatic to help allies in Germany act out. But critics are saying it really helps Russia.
There's a whole bunch of Democrats who called President Trump a Russian asset that now have egg on their face because they're going to need to call Biden a Russian asset for this move. This is exactly what President Putin wanted. Joe Biden just gave him the biggest gift.
And the White House still says their position is that this pipeline should not go forward, should not be completed. But it appears their actions in waiving these sanctions on officials who are involved made it easier to be completed. Charles.
Yeah, feels like certainly Vladimir Putin a big winner here. Thank you so much, Peter. Well, Neil Crabtree lost his job on the Keystone Pipeline when President Biden scrapped the project, and he joins me now. So, Neil, just what do you make of this latest move from the White House?
Man, it's well, thanks for having me to begin with, but it's a gut punch to the blue collar American energy workers in this company when we're told to sit on the sidelines, and then the administration wants to let their Russian comrades into the game. It's tough for us, and the only explanation that we can get is we've got to keep good relations with Germany. And I'm keeping thinking to myself, well, what about our good neighbors to the north, Canada? This Keystone XL pipeline was going to benefit both of our economies. I'm kind of wondering what they're thinking right now.
Yeah, Canada didn't mince any words about their displeasure with this. And you're right, Neil. It felt like it was a box to be checked as you come in, and it was a sort of a nod to the left. But other than that, from an economic point of view, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I want to point out, you are or were with local union 798. You're a union man. This is supposed to be the greatest union president in history, and the first act is to destroy the jobs of 11,000 union workers. I mean, how do you deal with that?
I'd like to take just 1 second here to apologize, to Canada myself, because I've got a lot of blue collar workers up there. I didn't vote for this guy or whoever's running the show up there right now. Like I said, I just want to take 1 second to apologize to them.
Yeah. Neil, I don't have a lot of time, but I do want to ask how you're doing. Has there been any help? I know green energy jobs were promised to all of the folks who lost their jobs. Have they materialized yet?
No, they ain't materializing. They're not going to. I mean, a prime example of this is what's going on in Germany right now. You hear so much about they're pushing to a green new economy, but yet they're having to beg from a pipeline from, of all places, from Russia. When we could have provided that fuel to Germany. That's one of the reasons that President Trump put these sanctions in on it, because he knew Russia didn't need to be providing this fuel. We're set up to where we could have done this. Here in the United States, got that gas to Germany. The only thing it's doing is costing Americans jobs.
Well, Neil, we want you to stay strong. We appreciate you coming on, and believe me, we will continue to check up on you and your colleagues. Talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, folks, could banks soon be giving the IRS access to your accounts without your permission? The story you're not hearing, but you should be. And something Bernie Sanders is trying to do to Israel has Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst fired up and wondering if Democrats are bailing out on one of our top allies. She will be joining us on that and this reported ceasefire coming up.